My name is Vivian Kai Loco. I have a huge panel that will take us through everything for the 2024 elections as we take hold of the ship and drive you to the declaration for the results for this year's elections. When I come back, I'll introduce that panel. I'll take you through what we'll be talking about in a few seconds. Stay with us. You're welcome back to our special coverage, preparing for the 2024 election coverage. My name is Vivian Kai Loco. Just gone by, prior to me coming in, you saw the big final rally of the two major political parties, the NPP and the NDC. Today ends the campaign season for these two political parties and all others trying to put across what they will do when they come into power. But now, we're going to look at that and then the numbers and what you're likely to see on election day. In the studio with me here, we have Salam Adonu. You see him on Saturdays on what we call the big issue. And other times you see him on what the papers are saying. And he's also a lawyer at the other side of the world. Salam, welcome.
Thank you, Vivian.
Then we have Larry Dogwe, managing editor of the Herald newspaper, also joins us for what the papers are saying, as well as Breakfast Daily every now and then. Larry, welcome.
Thank you.
And then a gentleman who you've not seen on TV for close to 4 years. Last election, he was with us. His returning means that it's a crucial time now. Godfred Akotobuafo on the breakfast show every day on radio joins us as well.
Vivian, you look stunning.
You look good.
You look stunning.
It's been a minute.
It's good to be back, Vivian.
And then we have Richard Delasky, a lawyer, as well as one of the key people on the breakfast show, joining us. You also see him every now and then on TV. Richard, welcome.
Honored to be here.
And on the extreme side of the studio, if you have a wide shot, you see a gentleman I have been doing this with in the afternoons, actually, on what we call the Situation Room. He's also on radio every day. Bernard Avle. He's going to be giving us the figures, the numbers, analysis around those numbers and why we see certain things in particular regions. It's rather biased panel, all men, but I'll try to drive
But
the
the woman is driving the ship.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
You all look lovely in your white.
Well,
And then Richard complimenting it with a jacket.
I know, right?
So tonight the discussion is, what is this election about? What are we going to see? Why will people go the blue or the green? Or whatever you want to say. Some say yellow. I don't know about that. But I know it's going to do a green or a blue for Ghana. I'm going to start with, who am I starting with? Larry.
No, start with the UK team. The UK team.
I'm going to start with Sky. Quickly, I want us to do some 5 minutes on the final campaign we saw. And Bernard, you're going to be part of that. You're not just going to do the, the numbers. We've seen the two major political parties throw their last ammunition for Saturday. Your impressions about that final, did it make any, inroads at this time?
Well, first of all, let me say that I must commend the two political parties because, I mean, much earlier before the events today, some of us had expressed fears about the closeness of the two events, the venue,
locations, yeah,
and the likelihood that, something could happen as a result of the closeness. As we speak, we have not heard any untoward report of something so bad happening, and that is to celebrate the two political parties, the people who are leading them, and then also the police service for the job they have done thus far. Great effort, and I must commend all the people behind it. And of course, the media for the critical role they played in raising some of these critical issues as to drive the police to put the attention where attention has got to be put.
Yeah.
That having been said, I think in terms of the level of organization, I think the two political parties have pulled it off in a big way. But I would say that when it comes to production for purposes of media consumption, I think the NDC appears to have done a better job in terms of how they package their event today. You'll notice that at some point, the sound was poor. The lighting also went off at some point, and they had to make some quick attempts to resolve the issue. I think a greater effort needs to be made when you're dealing with your closing arguments, because people want to feel exactly what's happening there. People are not at the scene. They want to be taken there, and they want to be a part of the process of electing a new president. And if you deny them of that in a certain way, it goes to affect your message getting out there. But beyond that, I think very cardinal messages were sent this evening.
Yeah.
We have heard the closing arguments of John Dramani Mahama, the former president, who was seeking re-election, and then the vice president, Mahamudu Bawumia, who is seeking election as president of the republic. Basically, John Dramani Mahama is seeking a return to the presidency, and his argument is that I want to create jobs for you. I believe people are struggling. I went around this country and I've seen poverty written on the faces of people. The problem is jobs. I am promising that when I come, I know what it takes to create jobs so that the youth will have something to do. It's a major issue. When you go around the country, you hear that. Then he's talking about what? Accountability. You've had an NPP administration that has run affairs of Ghana for the past 8 years. We've had scandals upon scandals, some of which were not thoroughly investigated and perhaps prosecuted to the glory of God. So people are generally not happy about the state of affairs. The question is whether they believe that John Mahama's return, should that happen, lead to the kind of accountability that they expect. Then you also have the question of, there's one thing that he talks about, prosperity for all of us, that it would seem that under the current administration, you've seen concentration of wealth in the privileged few, and you hear all the names that get bandied about, and that the government does not appear to be distributing the wealth across the country. So he wants to fix that.
Okay.
Now, the reverse is John Mahamudu Bawumia, who says that, we have been able to turn this country around, only for COVID to come to smash us, only for the war in Russia, Ukraine, to undermine our efforts. But we told you that during COVID, we were capable of bringing the economy back to life, but not human beings. Now we are doing that. And if you look at the economic numbers, they will throw them up and say that, we have increased trade surplus. We have, the CD recently is performing fairly well. If you look at the history of the CD over the last couple of years and all of that. But people do remember the haircuts.
Okay.
So he's making the argument that, we'll be able to fix it going forward. Okay.
So let
I have
me go
two
round.
more things to say.
No,
but that's okay.
we'll come back to that later. Our time is very limited. So tonight, gentlemen, I want you to keep it straight to the point. Papa, you have a lot of time on Saturday, Sunday, even Monday and Tuesday. So don't worry.
I thought I wanted to make it 3-3, but that's okay.
So I'll come back to you. Comrade, in 2 minutes, and 2 minutes goes round. Were you sold with whoever for Saturday based on the closing remarks and closing the curtain for Saturday, of course, for the past 4 years, but tonight, did it make any difference? And what do you think they could have done to make a difference if they didn't?
Well, I think that today for both parties reflected the kind of campaign that has been run. I think that the NDC put out an assured performance today on the final rally. I agree with Sky when he says that it was well organized, it was well put together in terms of the messaging, in terms of the personalities and the audience resonance. The NPP also put out a couple of strong names, but it's been staggered. If you look at the campaign they've run, it's been a campaign built around Bawumia's stardom by himself. They haven't had as much stars to spread around, so Bawumia had to do a lot of legwork. Later to be supported by by a former president, Kufuor, and the sitting president. If you look at the NDC side, they've had quite a few stars to spread around. So Mahama hasn't had to do too much work You've had the rise of Malik Basintale. You've had Sami Jemfi. You've had General Desiedun Ketia run around. You've had Otukuno. You've had all these names spread around. And I think it's reflective of the kind of campaigns they run. As to whether everybody is sold on, I think it's a hard task for both parties. If you look at where they've been, the number of times they've been there, everybody understands what is at stake, where everybody has looked to maximize their resources the best way. So you look at the NPP, they didn't spend too much time in the Volta region because they know they won't get much out of it. If you look at the NDC, spends quite a bit of time in the Ashanti region because they know exactly what they want to get out of it as well. So in the end, it becomes a matter of we are working hard till the very last minute to convince a lot of people. In the end, those who showed up today are those who they know they can convince. They've already convinced them. Perhaps they were talking to those they have not been able to convince. Whether they've been able to do that, Saturday will tell.
We'll see that on Saturday. Mr. Larry, what do you think?
Oh, I think it went well. Yeah, it went well. I mean, to have, as the two, my two colleagues said, to have brought their supporters to this level of, closeness.
Without any incident.
Yes, Ayawaso and then Medina, without an incident. Without an incident because when I was coming to town, I noticed the presence of, policemen almost at every corner that you could think of, and traffic control was also okay, and so on. And I think that by and large they did well. On the message, I think, like Akoto said, I mean, we already know what we are voting for, okay? Whether we are voting for continuity, those who want to vote for continuity knows what they've already decided. And those who also want a change, they've also made up their mind. And so much of what happens today will not change anything.
It wouldn't change for anybody?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It wouldn't change much.
Just the final chorus in church.
I think so. They're just restating, whatever they have told people already. Yeah.
Hello, you agree?
Yeah, largely yes. I think it was a good program on both sides. Quite impressive on both sides as well. The messaging, I think, is just a restatement of everything they've said in the past and trying to pitch for the last time to the generality of Ghanaians. In terms of the crowd size, yes, between NDC and NPP, I'm not sure you can pick anything, in terms of crowd size. They both have the numbers to marshal a lot of people at a place. So you can't use crowd size to make any major difference. For me, I want to look at the Kufuor factor. You realize that they deployed Kufuor towards the last lap of the campaign quite effectively. Yeah. We saw that interview, the primetime interview with the Ashanti region journalist in his house. Yeah. And he spoke Twi in that interview. That told you that Kufuor is a very important factor or asset to the NPP. And that interview, in my view, was addressing specifically the Ashanti audience, So we saw that they used the face of the media in Ashanti region to do that. After that, he went to the Eastern region, after a while. So we saw the reaction from that interview. Alan was not happy. Alan thought that Kufuor had thrown him under the bus, etc., etc. He wasn't happy. It got to Kufuor as well. So Kufuor went to Ashanti, the Ochinhine's palace, and said that people's statement, you don't have to say some things, but he said it, and that Bawumia was a man of destiny. Yeah. That was a major endorsement of the man Bawumia. Talked about how he met him in some program abroad, he came to do a presentation, blah, blah, blah. Major endorsement of the man Bawumia. Major, even more seminal or more impactful than what Nanado himself would have done, So we saw Kufuor in that sense. He went ahead to do a few other things. And today, they drove him to the place in his wheelchair. He took quite some amount of time to push the Bawumia message. Why did they do that? In my view, they did so because Kufuor, as it stands now, cuts across. It's a very important figure in the NPP, and it's not as divisive as he was years ago in the country. So it's a rallying point for many people. It gets like that. Yeah. As we speak, Nanado is quite a contentious or a divisive figure. As time goes on, the divisiveness will reduce. Now it is his record that is on the table. It is his record the NDC is attacking, and Bawumia is running on this record, so he has a stake in it. He has to say some things. There was a reason why people didn't expect Kufuor to endorse Bawumia the way he did, even though I thought there was nothing wrong with it, because that is his party.
His party, yeah.
You know, people didn't expect him to do so because they consider him a statesman. Nado is a statesman, but he's the president. His record is what is under attack. So people expect him to be active in the race. You know, we saw all of that. We saw him today talk, addressing the people. A lot of the people they are seeking to address are the people in the Ashanti region. And we've seen how important Ashanti region has been in this campaign. In fact, Mahama left Ashanti region straight to the campaign ground, or to the rally ground. I understand, what's the name? Bawumia also was in Ashanti region today. Even at the last minute.
He came back yesterday.
Came back last night. Telling you that Ashanti region has been key. Bawumia spending over 15 days in Ashanti.
But the president was also in the region today.
You know, so it tells you how important that region is. So having Kufuor as an asset, you don't leave him unused. So I think they milked him enough, and I think it was a good strategy. Generally.
Okay, final one from Bernard. You the final rallies, your thoughts on that?
Nothing else to say. I just wanted to say that because therefore I'll give you 4 issues in this election. I think this election is about economy versus education, and I'll explain. The NDC is making economy the issue. When I interviewed Fifi Kwete yesterday, he said it's an economy election. The NPP in the last 3 months have succeeded in bringing the free SHS as an issue. That's why the NDC even started doing ads to say, we are not cancelling free SHS, we'll make it better. So economy versus education, that's number 1. Number 2, it's urban versus rural. Because if you look at the map behind you, generally, people in rural areas registered more than people in urban areas in terms of percentage growth. Yeah. The sentiment in urban areas is markedly different. We saw that in the previous polls. So that's the second major issue here. All right. There's also a north versus south issue because, again, the more north you go, the more people are eager to vote. Why? The 2 candidates are from the north. So it seems as if there's going to be a certain outcome in the north that may even defy previous trends. In the south, Ashanti, Greater Accra, Western, you didn't see that much enthusiasm. All right. So you have rural versus urban, north versus south, economy versus education. Some people want to say it's also past versus future, although I'm not really sure the NDC will agree to that, because if you listen to the NPP today, a lot of the presentation was that we are looking to the future. If you go to Mahama, you are going to the past. So that's a bit, but the 3 I've said, almost all the people I've interviewed agree that essentially there's an urban-rural issue going on. There's an education, economy, dynamic playing out. There's also a north-south issue playing out. And those contrasts are very clear for you to see that depending on where this goes. And of course, there's also change versus continuity. That's the big story, right? Do you want more of the same? Which is why the NDC talks, they always talk about Kufuor, Bawumia. So even though Bawumia is the candidate, they want you to know that Kufuor is the guy, because what people are feeling is about him. All right? Yeah. So that's the change thing versus the continuation. So I think those are the 4 major issues that have to be resolved to determine the outcome. I can even add a bonus one. Strongholds versus swing regions. Okay. Because of the point they made about Ashanti, because if you look at this, everybody's in Ashanti. Why? Because people realize that if there's a massive turnout in the government stronghold, it kind of makes nonsense of a lot of things that happen, because the swing regions are quite marginal. So a bonus point would be strongholds versus swing regions and how things pan out. Right. So maybe later on we can show some of that here.
So we've laid the foundation. So it's a game of numbers. I mean, you can do, but if you don't get the figures to make you pass the required, you don't have any. So let's go straight to that. You're standing right in front of that very important screen there. So let's start with the national outlook in terms of the margins, the differences we've seen over the years, and then we'll pick comments as we go along.
Can you allow me to walk to the other side?
Sure, you can come.
Because I want to explain the numbers and get your comments. Okay. The reason I say it's a north versus south issue, all right? So here we have 2020 versus 2024 registered voters. The percentage growth, the average growth in voters is 10% in the country. So anybody above 10% means that they've registered more compared to 2020, not in absolute numbers, because if I show you absolute numbers of voters, just to make the point clear, this is the national. Greater Accra has the most. Ashanti has the second. then Eastern and Central. So the population is centered here. These are very sparsely populated areas. But the North versus South issue plays out when you look at percentage change in voters, which means how eager are people registering. Yeah. All right? The national average is 10%. Look at Northeast region, 17% growth in voter population. That's a lot of people registering, okay? Take Northern region, 15%, 5% above the national average. That tells you that there's a lot of eagerness to vote. Now, gentlemen, the reason this is interesting is that if you match these registrations with the NCC's survey asking people likelihood to vote, the people who want to vote are in the North. Mm-hmm. Northeast, 97.3. Northern, 97.4. Upper East and Upper West in the top 90s. Volta, 88, which is middle. Greater Accra, 70. Ashanti, 81. Central, 78. Eastern, 76. So we see a correlation between eagerness to register, possibly because the both candidates are from there, and then also willingness to vote.
Right.
But what makes this thing very interesting is that even though the people up there want to vote more, the numbers are down.
Are down there. So hang on there. Let me bring in the other gentleman on the dynamics in this election around the North, which we know the two main guys are from there, and then the lower part where the numbers are, and how both parties can reconcile this two. North, eagerness to vote, but the numbers are low. South, down south, mid-belt, all the way down south. That's where the action are in terms of the numbers. How do they balance these two sides?
Well, obviously up north, because there's an emotional attachment there. Yeah. Northeast, because obviously that's Baumia's home region. Mm-hmm. So the push to get people to come out there. If you look at the voting trends over the past two elections, they have really come out to vote. And when we get into the numbers over the weekend, I will show you this. If you look at the North as well, as Bernard explained, it's a 9-9 split there in Parliament, but the NDC generally does well there. Now, they also have a stake in this because of one of the candidates there. So certainly there will be a push. Now, there's also been, the trends over the past two elections have shown that the arrival of Bawumia on the scene has impacted what happens in the North, which used to be a very strong, one would say, NDC enclave. So the rise in those numbers, what does it mean? Mm-hmm. Does it mean that the NDC has gone out there to get people back in? Does it mean that the NPP is growing there? Mm-hmm. Those are things that on Saturday we will be able to make sense of once we start getting some numbers. Now, if you come down south, there isn't that much of an affinity to the candidates as we would see there. Again, because of, I would say, voter sophistication to a certain level, the way people are enthused about showing up to vote, about registering, might not be the same up north. We've discussed matters of apathy, and again, that will come up later on, which explains some of the poor numbers, I wouldn't say relatively poor numbers compared to what we've seen up north for the southern arenas. Ashanti, I think, flattens out a bit. Even though if you look at the percentage change, for instance, it's 254,000 persons more who have registered. I think it's the largest in the country, Bernard, if I'm not mistaken.
So in absolute numbers, Ashanti has the most, but in percentages,
it's not significant.
It's not that significant. Don't forget, the bigger the base.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why we show. So as you are saying, Ashanti has 275,000 more registered voters, but that's just a 9%. So it's actually lower than the national average, right? Greater Accra has the second largest absolute number of registered voters in terms of new voters. Yeah. All right. But when you put the percentage together, it's just the national average. So the eagerness question is better answered by percentages than by than by the raw
numbers.
The raw number. Yes. I just wanted to go back. So Greater Accra,
6%.
236, but it's just 6%.
6%.
Yeah.
So
lower than the average.
I think that the two questions here. If the base is big, it tells you that there are more people to vote. So even though the percentage is small, because the election is first past the post, the bigger base should be considered, right? Because you can take 3 constituencies in Accra, and the Northeast region is over. If you take Dome Kwabenya 183,000, Ashaman, and you add the third one, Amasaman, they are, actually I can show you that right now. Where's Dome Kwabenya? Dome Kwabenya is 182,000. Where's Ashaman? So that's 357 already.
Yeah.
Now, if I add Amasaman,
170.
527, all right? Now, let's go back to regionals. If I take the Northeast region, 339,000, the whole region. So, these people I got to vote, they are not many.
Yeah.
These guys down there, are not so interested in voting.
But they don't really
but they are a lot. So, if somebody here, their voters don't show up, and his opponent's voters show up, the gap that they produce here may annihilate a whole region. So you need to balance the base of voters and the eagerness to vote. It's not very easy to do, which is why you guys are here to help us explain it.
You showed me something over the past weeks, looking at the numbers in terms of the eager side and
Eagerness
then all
yes,
the
yes.
apathy. And can you take us through that quickly?
I don't have that slide here, but what
Okay.
I have is that there's a direct correlation between this fact of deep red percentage growth in numbers with the NCC document. I'm sure Fred can put it out, because NCC did a survey in September and they asked people how likely you are to vote. The lowest percentage was Greater Accra, 70%. The highest was Northeast, 97.3, 97.4, followed by North, 97, just 0 percentage lower. And then Savannah was also high, OT was also high, Upper East, Upper West. So it was very clear, and these two are independent things. This is facts of people who are registered, and then these are people's intentions in a survey to vote. So we can easily say that the more people register as a percentage of the previous year, the more interested they are in voting. That's what I'm basically trying to say, Vivian.
Okay.
I hope that point makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So this tells you that we will have possibly higher turnout up north than turnout down south.
Okay.
That's basically one inference you can make. Western region didn't register that many. So if I show you Western, for example, just 8% growth. That's pretty small. All right. Growth in Central region, 11%, just 1% above the national average. So it's basically average. It's not that high. Volta region, 12% growth, 12.9, close to 13%. Again, people generally in 8-year cycles, people who are in opposition strongholds are more eager than people in government strongholds. So the voters, 12.9 to 13 makes sense because generally NDC tends to do well there. If you go to Upper East and Upper West as well, you will see that there's a bit of, there's a bit of eagerness to vote. Upper West is just 10. Upper East gives us 13, I think. Let's go there. 12.43. So generally, you will have bigger numbers in places where people have a disgruntlement.
All right.
Which possibly explains why the NPP has been very serious about the Kufuor point you made. Yeah. The Ashanti point.
Ashanti. So with that in mind, let's go quickly to the strongholds, the battlefields in terms of regions.
All right.
Now I'll take their thoughts on that.
Okay. If we are looking at just registered voters, I can go here. But if you want to look at performance of strongholds,
you have to,
I have to go back there.
So whilst you are going there, I'll pick their comments.
Yeah, while Bernard is doing that, I was looking at the census figures for 2021. And, you know, this election has also been made an issue about the youth.
Yeah.
Right? And 3 major regions stand out for me. The Northern, the Ashanti, and the Greater Accra.
Okay.
And the numbers are somewhat, very interesting. So you have Greater Accra, 41% of the population
youth
said to be youthful.
What's your definition of youthful? Because there's
so
an issue with
18
definition.
to 35.
Okay.
Just analyzing the report.
Okay. Well, people say 55 and they. Oh, he's an old man.
It's not saying
He's 35.
No, I used to be a youth.
So 18 to 35.
Yeah, that's right. Then you have Ashanti 39%, and then the Northern region making 40%.
Okay.
Now, at the same time, we're seeing major inflows from other parts of the country to these regions. So the Greater Accra region is receiving a lot of movement from other communities, especially in the rural areas, to these city centers. Then you have the Ashanti region also receiving the same, and then the northern region. Now, if you go to the western region, we're told that mining activities there are attracting a lot of the youth. Again, back to the issue of jobs. And then you also talk about the central region, where we are told that a lot of people are moving into that area because of the increasing urbanization there. Now, the question is, how have we seen messages from the two political parties, the two major ones, targeting specifically the needs of the youth, the issue of job, how to deal with the job issues that they face? Of course, digitization is a big issue right now because of issues about, AI, modernizing systems to respond to modern needs and all of that. And then also the question of what do we do with education? Because you have seen that the NPP keeps talking about free senior high school, producing a lot of people who are waiting to go to the university. Now the question is, will these people turn out on election day in their big numbers? And if they are voting, the question is, where are they placing their vote? The NPP creates a panic situation and says, these guys want to cancel. Mahama says, I'm not canceling. I just want to modernize it. Who do they trust most? And how will that impact the overall elections?
Okay, great stuff.
So interestingly, just to take it from there. So free SHS, so the youth question. Free SHS versus no fee stress, right? The first day free thing. Digitalization and unemployment. First thing, digitalization. So the youth has become central because of these three issues: education, free SHS. The MPP wants to make it an issue and drive the young people who have benefited from the free SHS. By the time you finish SHS, you should be around 16 or 17, 18. Largely, from 2017, those guys should be in the bracket, and so they should be able to vote. So if before your parents could not have paid for you to attend SHS, now you got it free. The point is, from 2017 till now, would they remember that? Because it's become the mainstay. It's become something that is to be expected, to the point of some being entitled to it now.
Right.
So will they be careful to credit the NPP with that? So that's what I think the NDC is trying to do. So now you finish one thing. There's a proverb in where that I mean, when you eat what you ate yesterday will not take you throughout the day today, right? So you ate yesterday, you were full yesterday, but today you are hungry. So they got a free SHS. Now they are moving to the next level, which is the university or the tertiary institution. Free SHS is not going to pay for their university education. So the NDC is seeing that quickly is introduce the no fee stress program, so they can harvest at least some of the people there. That is a strategy I think they introduced.
And the MPP appears to be cut them young and they shall be rose forever.
Yes, so the issue about digitalization, I think that they are both, equal on that level. They both want to train 1 million youth in coding or digital skills, almost saying the same thing, etc. Unemployment is a key issue. MPP says they've created how many jobs? 2.5 million jobs or 2.7 million jobs. NDC says they are the people to create the jobs. Apprenticeship. And a lot of the things they've said, of course, we heard it of the Akukon Kitikiti and all of that. The issue of jobs is also at the center of it. So now talking about young people, free SHS, digitalization, unemployment, key. Now, let me quickly speak about the numbers down south. So the two candidates are from the northern part of the country. They want to vote, but their numbers are not many. The guys down south want to vote, but not as much as the guys up north. That is why they have running mates from the southern part of the country. We know Napo's job was cut out for him. Whether he's been able to do that well or not, we'll see after Saturday. Professor Jenano Pokwajima, Central Region, as Bernard showed, is also one of the areas with high numbers in terms of the young people who have registered, or new first-time voters. Whether she's also been able to do it well, we will see. Mind you, in the last election, the NDC won the parliamentary in that region, but lost the presidential. She was on the ticket, but she failed to get the region to vote for herself and John Mahama. She spent quite some time there. To be interesting to see how Central Region turns out in terms of the numbers. There are very important constituencies there. The Kaswa, what's the name? Awutu Senya East has a lot of people. The Gomoa areas and the Agona areas, a lot of people. But the Ayawasu East and the Gomoa West have traditionally been NPP. Are they able to turn that around or eat into that lead? If they're able to get that, then it will show up the numbers for presidential. It may not be parliamentary, because parliamentary, no matter the number, once you win, you win. the numbers, how they're able to do, will be important to turn the presidential around.
Okay, Alaska.
Yeah,
Larry,
I
you want
say
to? Yeah,
something.
okay.
You know, I think that this election is largely going to be defined by the youth.
Okay.
Okay, so
But sorry, do they care?
no, I think they care.
They care?
Yeah, they
I
care.
think they don't.
No, they do. They
They
care.
don't care.
They care. Don't.
I think they do.
No, they do. They do.
Not that they don't care because they are irresponsible.
Yeah,
they,
but
they are
do.
just happy people. Yeah?
They do.
They are happy.
Gen Zs and all these.
I can help you.
Okay.
So again, I'll use the surveys.
Okay.
Afrobarometer, what's the other one?
NCC, yeah.
and Global Info Analytics. The largest chunk of people who say I won't vote are between the ages of 18 and 29. So the largest chunk of those who say I won't vote are supposedly first-time voters.
Yeah.
So
Did they give the reason?
they don't go beyond that. They break it down. So a lot of older people want
I
to
think
vote.
they are
actually.
not happy with the few that I've spoken.
No,
with.
but-
They are not
But
happy.
by the way,
I don't
this
generally
is October. You see, I always use these surveys,
Yeah.
and I look at the campaigns as well, because election dynamics are not steady. So if somebody does a survey in October and a lot of youth say they are not going to vote, the politicians also read these surveys. So they craft their messages in November into December around those. So my point is that generally, the largest, so less women wanted to vote and less youth wanted to vote. So even though they are saying they are fighting for the youth, that the Gen Zs in particular seem to be disenchanted with the political system.
Indifferent.
A lot of them support the demonstrations that were done by the Occupy Julobi group and that type of thing. A lot, especially the so-called woke generation. So again, youth is very broad because some youth in rural communities are very eager to vote and they are very political. So I always have to bring that distinction in there. But the surveys basically said that 18 to 29-year group were the largest chunk of I won't votes than the others. So if that will help your discussion. you
And
can
also
use that.
perhaps because these are people who are now forming their political identities. If you look at most of the people who would be second or third or fourth time voters, these are persons who would have been born in an era or met an era of basically moving on from Rawlings, going to the Atamils, Rawlings to Kufuor, to Atamils, to Mahama, to Kufuor. If not, they would have seen Mahama, Kufuor. So there's a little bit of political experience, but they would also that would mean that their choices are slightly better informed. That would also mean that there has been time for these two parties or other parties to woo them.
That's right.
But these numbers that we are looking at are persons who are now perhaps looking to make up their minds about where exactly they fall. And genuinely, most of them might also not feel enamored by the options that are available to them now.
Chada is there.
Yeah.
There's also that.
Yeah.
There is also that.
I'll tell you something about Cheddar. Briefly, some of them, I'll say something about Cheddar. Cheddar, again, in the polls, was rising very much. There was a comment he made about the recent demonstration, which affected him.
Yes.
So, I was looking at the numbers. Cheddar was always doing like a 4-5, better than Alan. Then I think after the recent demo at Down Galamsey, he allegedly said something about whether these people were not being political. A lot of that group were upset with him that he said that. And we've seen a bit of
That's why I
decline.
thought he lost it.
Yes, a bit of decline in his numbers there because those guys, as you said, they are looking for, they are now forming their political opinion.
Yeah.
So it's probably not disenchantment, it's not as uncertainty. They don't know where to go. And maybe they were thinking Cheddar was a vehicle, but and I'm not sure that's the only thing. But that comment really annoyed social media followers, that group. So maybe they are still not sure who to vote for, since they are looking for an independent champion they are not getting.
Yeah.
So that could be an interesting.
Back to what Akoto was saying. I mean, these 18-year-olds, most of them are still living on the aprons of their parents. Okay? So, like he said, their political views haven't been formed yet. I mean, bread and butter is provided to you by your mom and dad. So, I mean, fuel, you don't have to buy fuel. Electricity, none. And so everything comes from mom and dad.
But also, if mom and dad who provide for you say this is where we want to go, you are likely to follow.
Yeah, like
No, but
Not in this
listen,
generation.
Not this generation.
They will contest it.
No.
Yeah.
A few will definitely.
No.
They'll fight it.
But again, it depends on the level of
You
exposure. of the
would
child.
have been socialized, you know, subconsciously throughout the bread and butter, you know, provision process. So it's not as if they'll call you one morning and say, hey, go vote NDC or go vote NPP. The conversation
You
at
feel
home,
their
thing is,
frustration,
you have been
their
socialized over the period. So you know that if I won't vote, even if I vote at all, I'm voting for party A or party B. Why? Because this is what I know.
But the generation we grew up in, you know, we were living on just TV and radio. These guys have access to internet.
Yeah.
And so they are picking up so much information all over the world.
Yeah.
So their opinions are, you know, already formed.
Okay.
You see, that raises
to
the
trend.
question of whether the various political parties have farmed properly and whether they are harvesting that which they have farmed. Because you have Snapchat. The question is whether the NPP and NDC played very well around these issues. You understand? Of course, you hear the highfalutin ideas about what they want to do on Facebook and Twitter. But the truth is that these are platforms used generally by the older folks. So the question is, if you go on Snapchat, Instagram, were they as heavy? And did they TikTok? You know were they as heavy
We have
in terms of driving their message?
Actually, we have a minute. I'm going to give yes.
Already?
This is just a tease
No,
of what
no,
to expect on
I think
Saturday.
I am moving.
You are protesting.
No, respectfully, I'm moving.
Respectfully, I love you too.
Yes,
But it's not going to happen. So
You mean the judge will dismiss it?
yes, so I am the judge yet. It's not happening. But just to tell viewers
spoken
and
to
listeners, yes, Bernard will wrap up with just 20 seconds. So let him have that, and then I wrap up.
So
Bernard,
basically, as Vivian
you have
said,
the
we are
final
just
say.
letting the viewers know that this is the type of thing we'll be doing. And we chose to do it after the two major rallies so you can get a sense of where we are headed. But starting 6 a.m. on Saturday, we're going to be very heavy on data and also evidence from the past, experience in covering elections, and just being there at the right time. So don't be too bored. This is just this is the hors d'oeuvre. Is that what they call it, Godfred? This is the beginning before we get into the main course.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming.
A pleasure.
This, like Bernard has said, this is just the beginning. On Saturday, we start our coverage proper of the 2024 elections, and we end till the declaration of the next president of the Republic of Ghana. My name is Vivian Kai Loko, here with Selo Madonu, Larry Dogbe, Godfred Akutobwafo, Richard Delaskai, and our very good friend, Bernard Koko Avle. Yes, Mr. Touchscreen. On Thursday, we'll have all of them. Friday, actually on Saturday, all of them and all that you need to know. Normal programming continues from now. Goodbye.